Welcome to my humble abode. I am Yorkie the Talespinner, and this is Tales Over Coffee, a morning show where we start the day with a narrative tale and a coffee together, in the hope of welcoming a blessed day. This is Suzerain, the tale of Anton Rain's presidency of Sordland. Let's step back in. We've had security briefings. Now we must continue. Dinner with the family at home. After a long day at the palace, I was finally home. I thanked Serge and walked through the front gates, nodding at the two guards as I went by. Even as I turned the doorknob, I could hear Diana rushing down the stairs to greet me. I opened the door and there she was, standing in front of me with expectant eyes. "Papa, you're home." There's my beautiful princess. I lifted Diana up and hugged her while trying to put the keys in the tray next to the entrance. She was growing fast. Lifting her up was no longer as easy as it once was. How was school? I would ask about Mother, but I wanted her attention to the daughter first. Each person gets their own attention. Boring, like my old school better. I put her down and her expression turned serious. Papa, are the bad men gone? I'll never let anyone hurt you, ever. Okay, Papa. Diana dashed down the hallway. Mama, Papa's here. Monica appeared next to the kid. A sad thing to do, but that was the only option that seemed valid, and honestly, none of them are absolutely true. Monica appeared next to the kitchen door. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. Diana, what did I tell you? No running in the house. Yes, Mama. Monica approached me and kissed me on the cheek. A tantalizing smell wafted from the kitchen behind her. I don't want to say she shouldn't have. I should show appreciation. That kind of is, but I'm said just leave it to the cook. And to an extent, I agree with that. You hire people to do things so that you don't have to. But at the same time, her stepping in to make a meal is a blessing. So... but that's dismissive. That's presumptive. How was your day, dear? Terrific. I finally got to do some grocery shopping just like old times, and I'm making your favorite. You mean... Yes, zabla. Zabla was one of my hometown specialities. A chickpea stew, topped with beef, braised in tomatoes, Belgian spices, traditionally served with in a clay pot. It was absolutely my favorite dish, especially paired with cabbage, the potent, unfiltered wine from my region. It's my lucky day. What's the occasion? No occasion, I just want to cheer everyone up a bit. Thoughtful person. Her smile faded and she lowered her voice so that Diana wouldn't hear. Especially after what happened at the ball. Indeed. I'm worried, Anton, for you, for the children, and for the country. Diana suddenly appeared next to us. Mama? Yes, sweetheart? I'm hungry. We'll eat in just a minute. Will you help me set the table? Anton, can you tell Frank to come down for dinner? He's been sulking in his room all day. Monica started taking out the china, while I headed upstairs to fetch my son. Loud rock and roll music echoed down the hallway from his room. I caught a faint hint of cigarette smoke. Knock on the door. There was no response. Knock again. Still no response. Frank, turn down that racket and open the door if you're going to be insulting towards me. Stereo in Frank's room clicked off. Alright, alright. You unlocked and opened the door. What do you want? Sarcasm is not needed. He's been through a lot. Hand over those cigarettes and join your family for dinner. You smoke, don't you? I'm old enough to do what I want. I'm trying to quit that nasty habit. You ought to stop while you can. Frank heaved a sigh, handed me the packet and headed downstairs. I followed him to the living room. The table was prepared and Monica was ladling food onto the plate. Come on, have a seat. It won't be as tasty if it's cold. As we started eating, the room went quiet. Monica's cooking was as delicious as ever, but I had the feeling that wasn't the reason nobody spoke. Monica was the first to break the silence. Say, did you know that they refurbished the grocery store? I don't know if you remember the owner. He's been there every day for the past 30 years. Can you imagine doing the same job for so long? What if you were president for 20 years, for example? I don't want this country to suffer under another Sol. Agreed, that must never happen again. Anyway, the grocer really is a nice person. He threw in some extra vegetables with my... Frank suddenly slammed his hand on the table, rattling the china. Monica, Diana, and I stared at him. So this is how it's going to be. We're just going to sit here like nothing happened. Dad, you could have been killed. Mum could have been killed. Any of us could have died. Diana's lower lip started trembling. Monica put a hand on Frank's shoulder. That's not needed right now. Always tempting. Frank, you know I would never let anything happen to you or Diana, even if it cost me my life. I know, but still. Can you at least tell me if something's being done about this? It was real close, Dad. My security assured me he took all the necessary steps. Same security that let the person get shot in front of the palace. Frank, listen to your father. If your father says we don't need to worry, then we don't need to worry. You have to trust him. Monica turned to me. We all have to trust each other. Things calmed down a bit at the table. We finished our food in silence. Honestly, his reaction is very understandable. Frank got up first and retreated back to his room. Monica lifted Diana and plopped her in front of the living room TV before turning to the table. She sat down across from me. Anthony is still young. That's what worries me. I made plenty of rash decisions when I was his age. You make plenty of rash decisions now. Well, that puts me in my place, doesn't it? Frank's not the only one who's scared, Anton. I'm going to be honest with her. I worry too, Monica. Things might escalate. Got up, stood behind me and massaged my shoulders for a moment before leaving me alone in the dining room. I sat alone at the table and drained my glass of cabbage. Had I been lying to Frank and Diana? Was the threat from my family truly over? Time would tell. It's not something you can guarantee, but at the same time, children need cohere comfort. Of course, if they are under threat, it could destroy all trust entirely. React to the unrest. We have 4 news articles, let's see. Allsword Post. Protests across Sordland. Protests erupted around Sordland after the death of Pernod Circus, many of which started peaceful but soon turned violent. Protesters with red youth flags were seen in most cultural cities around Sordland, carrying out violent riots and organising protests that disrupted much vital services from being delivered to the Zordish people. Protesters held sit-ins, which were broken up by riot police with tear gas and water cannons in the regions of Bergia, Agland and Gruni. Thousands of people poured into Republic Avenue on Lockhaven and Sol Square in Holsword in response to the young Sol's attack. Similar protests around Sordland soon turned into violent riots. Sordland today. Protests in Gruni. Protests are taking place throughout the Gruni region in response to the assassination of Pernod Circus. The protesters raised their concerns about the young swords, the increasing cost of living and inequality prevalent in the country. Large rallies have been organised in the cities as the centres of Benfi and Borin. A large congregation of Red Youth members have organised sit-ins and protests aimed at hampering public transport in the city of Valgan, which brought the city to a standstill for a few hours, before riot police came to disperse large groups of protesters at transportation nodes. Lockhaven Times political chaos. Political violence has surrounded Sordland since yesterday, while officials from the police claim to have the situation under control. Protests are turning into riots, and violent attacks are occurring around the country. NFP and LUS call for protests. Kazero Kibna of the National Front Party called a rally to condemn communist influence from United Cortana and called for the violent protesters as traitors to Sordland. These millennia vests are roaming our streets, conducting violent attacks in the disguise as peaceful protesters. We can't let them exploit a man's murder, said Kibna in a press conference. On the other hand, Labour Union of Sordland has gathered to condemn national violence in Sordland. The protests gathered crowds of several thousand and agitators from both sides in Holsord. An act of vandalism occurred in Katarina Horton accused Kibna of provoking the public. Young Swords vandalised shop and FP office burned. The wrong economy. The government has made its decision to promote a planned economy, a decision which is based on flawed arguments of Solonomics. The economists believe in free market economy for good reason. Now, before anyone calls us Arcasia sympathisers, we don't support the excessive form of capitalism Arcasia is spreading around the world, like in Lesbia. Our belief is that a balance can exist where the government can support the private sector with government money. Businesses could take the needed economic planning burden off the shoulder of the government. I'm somewhere near that, but we'll see what develops in future. React to the unrest. The political situation around the country has escalated. Chief Strategist Lucien Gallard has prepared several action plans that we can execute. What will we do to address the intensifying political climate? Deploying recruits in training is deploying untrained people. That's bad. Call for restraint on national television is minimal. Visits affected towns in person. That shows us getting out there. And it would be televised anyway. Label all protesters as traitors. There are some peaceful protests. It's the violence that is done by traitors. We'll visit the towns. And we have one news article on that. President Rain talks protesters. President Anton Rain visited towns around Greater Holsord and Grooney regions, which were heavily affected by the protests and riots that popped up around the country, triggered by the death of Circus. He was seen talking to protesters and listening to concerns of the citizens. This sends a powerful message to citizens that the government is walking among them and listening to their problems. Holsord is desperately trying to restart Sordland's economy after the recession, and this political unrest not helping, said a Swordish scholar and professor of law at Holsord State University in Holsord. And day at the Maroon Palace. It was late in the evening, and the Maroon Palace was finally getting somewhat quiet, and I returned to my office at the top. I eagerly approached my chair and sprawled out on it. It had been an exhausting day. Just like every day since I took office. I said I'm trying to quit, so I will. Or some whiskey. It felt like the best salve after a long day at work. I glanced downwards out of the window and saw Serge and the guards waiting for me by the main gate. I heard a couple of knocks on my door. My secretary Olivia Suno entered. Mr. President, Mr. Tusk is here to see you. Who's that? Walter Tusk is a millionaire businessman, investor, and the current spokesperson of the Lothberg Group. He owns the Economist Group, which publishes a well-known paper, The Economist, and he's a major shareholder of Swordish steel company, Bergier Steel. According to Lockhaven Times, he's the 8th richest sword as of 1953. Walter began his career as an engineer after graduating with a degree in electrical engineering from Kings Hill University, one of the League of Trident. Later, Walter established several small businesses with his friends from college, including a restaurant, a company that imported cigarettes, and a car wash. After his successes as a businessman, he formed a very successful company that produced machinery parts and electrical wires, which earned him millions of Swedish ren. During the largely unregulated privatization of former state-controlled industries of late 1940s, Walter was able to acquire the shares of several important companies for a fraction of their estimated market value. He later became a member of the influential Lotharberg Group. He's credited for his large contribution to the energy industry in Sordland. Walter is also known for his international ties due to his investments in Lesbia, Agnolia, and Acacia. Walter is generally regarded as the leader of the Lotharberg Group due to his connections, the most important businessman in Sordland. You had a meeting with the Lotharberg Group spokesman. I'm so sorry for not giving you proper notice. Don't worry about it. The president has to be willing to adjust. Thank you for your understanding. After a moment, Mr. Tusk swaggered into the room. I'd met Sordland's most prominent businessman once or twice, but never alone. He had large jowls, blindingly shiny shoes, and the air of someone who was used to getting his way. Anything to drink, Mr. Tusk? Water? Whiskey? Cognac, preferably from before you were born, sweetheart. So we're getting disrespectful, are we already? Oh, you're talking to my secretary like that? I don't appreciate it. I'll check the supply room. Olivia backed out of the office, shooting me an apologetic look as she did so. Walter hung up his hat, which I could see was lined with mink. He fixed me with a long, hard stare and then broke into a toothy grin. Good evening, Mr. President. I am here to congratulate you. We both sat down. My business partners and I wish you a successful term at the leader of the nation. Why are you really here, Walter? I see that you're not very welcoming, President. I merely congratulated you. I see no reason to necessitate rudeness. You were rude to my secretary, Walter. Forgive me. I didn't mean to be rude. Long day. No need to ask for forgiveness. You are the president, after all. May I continue? Please. I'd like to build a profitable relationship between us. That being said, there are some concerns of mine and the people I represent, which I would like to take this opportunity to clear up. What are these concerns? The ruined state of the economy in Sordland has influenced everyone. The recession hit us all hard. Walter pulled out a box of cigars from his jacket. I had these bought in Lesbia. Brought from Lesbia. The best cigars in the whole continent. Would you like to try one? You go ahead, I don't want smoke. Walter grabbed himself a cigar and lit it. He looked out toward the city scenery as he puffed away. I heard that you purchased stock from the Aberdeen Industries in Acacia. Smart buy. They're developing new gadgets that are going to be profitable. The risk comes reward. Expect a very good return on investment. You have a keen eye for business. I will buy a couple of thousand shares too to expand my portfolio. Hopefully the investments pay off for both of us, President. His eyes wandered away for a moment. The assassination and the troubles caused between the left and the right are worrying, but the recession is the root of the cause of these issues. For us, it is worrying to see that you have decided to promote a planned economy. We need more government control to fix the economy, or the recession was planned by the market reforms of Alfonso. You really, though? Our government is already overburdened with managing several key industries with a loss of efficiency. He leaned forward in the chair. The highway investment was a good call. There's more to gain in the high-speed rail, especially for business logistics. The Anglan region was in dire need of investments. The most important goal is to divert the investments where most profits can be made for the treasury. No, it's where it's best for the country. We can be close allies. The group can help you get Sordland out of the recession, which will be the key problem to solve in your term, and could even determine your re-election. Let's start with a gesture of goodwill. Soon the investment project contract will be awarded to one of the 3 main contenders. He pulled a check out of his pocket and slid it toward me on the table. My personal bank details were listed on it, with a deposit of 500,000 Swedish Ren ready to be transferred. This was 6 months of a president's salary. If the contract is somehow ordered to underhaul construction, they would not only work hard and deliver, but also do it on time. What do you think, Mr. Rain? Wouldn't that be good? He put his index finger on the check. There was a noise by the door. Olivia Suno was standing there, holding a tray with a bottle and 2 glasses. I'm so sorry, Mr. Tusk, but all I could find was 1942 Savinia. I hope that's acceptable. You quickly put the tray on my desk and walked out. Tusk eyed her as she left. Remind me to visit your office more often, you dirty man. Now, where were we? Do we have a deal? And did you just try to bribe the president of Sordland? Refuse. Walter sighed and pulled the check away, putting it in his pocket. Did you think I was just another corrupt politician? Administrations are built on mutually beneficial partnerships. I am not to be bought, but I do understand where you stand now. Oh, I almost forgot. Please say hello to Mr. Caronte for me. He smiled. Have a good evening, Mr. President. Walter stood up, grabbing his jacket and made toward the door. He closed the door behind him. I gathered my things and prepared to finally head home. As I walked out, I noticed Livia still there, covering up a typewriter for the evening. If I may be so bold, Mr. President, did you accept his offer? Of course I didn't. How could you even ask me that? The other girls have told me about all kinds of dealings that went on during Alfonso administration. I wasn't sure if you're that kind of president. No, and most certainly I'm not. I'm not going to insult her. Mean her. She and I took a moment to look out over the lights of the city before heading to the elevators. 4 news items. Kibna suggests expanding executive powers. The leader of NFP, Kazero Kibna, has suggested a new constitution to expand executive powers, adding fuel to the debate over the possibility of reforming 1929 constitution. He pointed out that the current dire situation in Sordland and emphasised the need for strong leadership. The current constitution suggests the division of executive power between the cabinet and the president, who has no immunity before the courts for acts of treason and unconstitutional behaviour during office. In the system suggested by the NFP, the president would have absolute immunity before the courts. Yes, I don't hold to that, and it's the president who would chair the cabinet. It is not clear yet whether this suggestion would spark further debate in the Reform Committee with PFJP and the USP. The PFJP proposal has suggested that the president should have no presidential decrees, might result in abolishment of the assembly, and take the country to an early election, despite the independent's counter-proposal, give a similar power to the parliament to take down the president. That detail was not shared with the press yesterday. President talks to us. Yep, we know that. Reform Party gains popularity. Demands for reform are gaining more popularity than ever. Latest public opinion reports show that the majority of the Swedish people want changes in the governmental structures that were established under Tarquin Sol's military coup of 1929. The public trust in the Grand National Assembly and the Supreme Court is at an all-time low. While rumours of reform talks are coming out of the Assembly, it seems unlikely that, without complete unity, none of the parties would be able to lead such a proposal. In order to change the constitution, the proposal must collect at least 150 signatures, and then reach the needed 166 votes. If the proposal passed the Assembly, it is still subject to another voting in the Supreme Court, as well as judicial review, which still stands as the biggest obstacle. Radical Workers' Party Solidarity March. The pro-minority Workers' Party of Bludia, WPV, rally in Bludish majority city of Suzerain attracted a large audience. The gathering was heavy on flags and banners, whipping in the rain and chill wind, as the gatherers declared solidarity with Bernard Circus. Among the speakers at the rally was Mansoon Lek, a Bloodish member of the Assembly, who is standing as the leader of the independents in the Grand National Assembly. Although not a member of the WPB, he was the leading figure at the event. "We will again foil this war plot that was set up by Solist ideology," he said, in reference to the series of conflict and bloodshed during Tarquin Sol's term for president, which claimed thousands of bloodish lives. "We will come out of this tunnel of conflict. We will not only win against discrimination, we will win the truth. When we have all together foiled this trick of polarization, our songs of peace, which spread from Lizam, will ring out even stronger all over Sordland," Lake added in reference to the Izam incident of 1933, which triggered Tarquin Sol's persecution of Bloodish minorities in the formation of the militant organisation, Bloodish Freedom Front. Bloodish citizens targeted. 20 Bloodish citizens were attacked by a group of people suspected to be members of Young Swords during their peaceful protest to support Bernard Circus. The group was overwhelmed, and the local police force couldn't reach the protesters to protect them amidst the chaotic crowd. The attackers ran away without getting caught, and 11 of the victims were hospitalized with critical injuries. This must. Report from Narbel. The Ministry of Defence reports the situation along the border is getting tense. Rumberg's Southern Army was sighted, training close to our borders, and did not respond after we issued a radio message. The Chief of the Armed Forces, General Kruger, reports to have increased patrolling duties along the northern border to signal readiness. There are a bunch of situations all around. See what we have here. Finalization of the H3 highway contract. Then meeting with Marcel Caronti. Economic relief plan. Let's at least take care of the highway contract. Finalization of the H3 highway contract. After driving through the cliffside roads, we arrived at Lenkirk. There, cheerful citizens greeted us and the local government officials escorted us to the City Hall. Here, a significant meeting about the H3 project would take place. Several construction companies sent their representatives to the City Hall. Even though Gus Manger could not make the meeting, I had Simon Hall and Lilius Graff by my side. Besides starting our economic recovery, the travel time by road will drop by more than half, Mr. President, said Simon Hall. This project will improve the Agneland region, said Lilius. I have lived with these people and seen them suffer. I hope so, Lilius. The aims to economically strengthen this weak region will be partially accomplished. According to my estimations, this project will give about 50,000 citizens from Agneland employment. What will it take to stop the recession? This is just the beginning. We will need to follow this project up with several other economic investments or projects. Yes, indeed. That depends on the government budget. We need to make sure we have enough money to fund critical ministries, but still have money left for investments, said Lilius. Yes, said Simon. Simon searched the documents he was holding and found the one he was looking for. I have the overview of the companies here. Simon handed the files to me. Look at the files. I looked at the files. 3 corporations were listed: the Swordish State Corporation, Underhold Construction, and Taurus Holding. I reviewed them. I also took the liberty of asking the Mayor of Avery to give his opinion on the matter. Which corporation should we talk about? Let me hear about the State Corporation. The respected Swordish State Corporation, also known as the SSC, was founded in 1891. The main state corporation tasked with running the day-to-day construction services of our country. The SSC is one of the most trusted and honourable companies. They have served us a long time. I have worked with them on several occasions, said Lilius. It would fulfill your initial election promise using state-dominated planned economy to improve the bleak economic prospects, she said. They have the experience and manpower to pull off a project like this. Lilius paused for a second. Secondly, they are the only company to have worked in the Agland region out of all 3 corporations. So they know the lay of the land as well, that's good. The outdated construction methods they use concern me, said Simon. They are several decades behind. The experience they bring to the table is beneficial. I don't agree with the negative statements for the SSC. Their record clearly shows completed contracts with thousands of employees who have more than 20 years of experience. I like the SSC, but I want to hear about the others. Underhaul Construction. Just because they rejected a bribe does not mean I necessarily reject Underhaul. The real estate and construction giant was founded in 1925. They expanded during the economic boom of the 30s. Picking this corporation would go against our planned economic policy. The CEO of Underhaul is Chris Shah, mayor of Conriat. He sold half his shares a few years ago. Really, the CEO sold his shares? I had to work with Underhaul Construction before in Holsord. They took several contracts for the central station renovation. Left much to be desired. The H3 project shouldn't be left to them, said Lilius. Simon? I think they have been doing relatively well in the private sector, and they're dominating. Relatively well is not as good as we're hearing about the SSC, is it now? Dominating the construction industry with successful projects. Nonetheless, they treated their workers below our working standards. No. Working conditions must be respected. This does not inspire confidence. I agree, said Lilius. The workers were undocumented Agnolian and Wessex immigrants with no papers, a clear violation of our laws. According to them, the reason for the bad labour conditions was because of the tight completion schedule, which still doesn't justify the situation. Underhaulers specifically mentioned that their solid track record and highlighted the costs of the project would be more than expected for a project of this scale, but finished on time. Not sure about Underhaul Construction. Actually, I'm fairly sure I don't want to be anywhere near them. Finally, Taurus Holding. Taurus Holding was founded in 1946 and is owned by the entrepreneur Geralt Face. It's a new holding company whose subsidiaries use cutting-edge technology from Acacia to reduce construction and prices. They are known to provide their workers, who are part of Labour Union of Sordland. Provide for their workers. This is good. There are other things Taurus does very well, like providing consultants for the state corporations. I can't vouch for their infrastructure construction at all, said Lilius. Why should we work with Taurus? Taurus has completed fewer projects than the other companies. However, they are slightly faster and cheaper. It won several awards internationally, said Simon, for being one of the fastest growing and advanced companies. The innovation aspect is refreshing, especially if they can deliver. They were only involved in smaller scale regional projects. This doesn't prove their capabilities for larger undertakings that are more complex, said Lilius. The project manager from Taurus Holding mentioned that they would be able to finish the project with the allocated funding. Of course he's going to say that, said Simon. They are the only company who found the budget sufficient. Making them a cheaper alternative. Yes, they know they have to compete. Taurus is worth considering. It's time to make a decision about which company to award the H3 highway contract to. I'm not doing Underhaul. They seem more than questionable, especially with the way they treat the labourers. This is the SSC. This is a state itself, and this is an important project, which means perhaps shouldn't be given to private industry. Private industry can be very, very effective, but private industry can also badly fail. We are using a planned economy model. Taurus Holding are not actually planned economy. They are private industry, but they do treat their workers well. They also would free up. It doesn't seem to make a difference financially, but it does say that they were the only ones to express they could do it. Now, of course, they're a smaller company. They're going to say they can do it even if they can't, because they need the business. I think we're going with the SSC. Good that we are staying consistent to our economic strategy. Someone signed a certain section of the dossier and fixed his glasses. Very well, Mr. President, the contract will be awarded to the Sordland State Corporation. Very glad that you've made this choice, said Lilius. I can tell from my experience that we'll be very satisfied with this corporation. The company will be notified today, and the construction work will begin immediately after, said Simon. I think we're off to a good start. My expectations for a grand opening ceremony are late next year. I better get back to work then. Thank you, this concludes the meeting. The meeting ended, and we spent the remainder of the day attending events in Lenkirk. It was nice to enjoy the natural beauty of Agland and eat some good fish. The economy has sunk a little. Hopefully that will help us recover, though. Just catch the news. Construction begins for H3 Highway from the Holsworth Post. Sordland State Corporation has been awarded a 2-year contract for an extensive infrastructure project. Subsequent design and construction work as part of the H3 Highway expansion project in Sordland. In addition to the geotechnical ground investigation, SSC will provide the design of all civil structures, including ground retaining walls and earthworks for the highway. SSC said it could build the line faster than the deadline and at a much lower cost, according to a letter seen by The Economist. But opposition leader Richter has warned that letting SSC build H3 would be extremely questionable. The H3 project involves the widening of hundreds of kilometres of existing motorway between Lochhaven and Avery, including an open tunnel nearly 3 kilometres long. The highway will pass from Lenkirk to Avery, and later will be expanded into the Agnolian capital, Stalport. Risky Highway Project. The government has announced a new mega infrastructure project to help alleviate the symptoms of the recession. When the Minister of Economy announced that the launch of one of the most contested construction projects in Sordland, a new highway from Lochhaven to the Agnolian capital, Stalport, he said, this project will cross the poorest areas of Sordland, developing the region, improving foreign trade, and increasing access to employment. The contract for the project was given to the old and outdated Sordland State Corporation, with the decision of the President. Mega projects such as the construction of ports and transport lines, including railways and motorways and power plants, typically cost billions of Sordland. They are difficult to manage due to their scale, high levels of complexity, and substantial impact on communities, the environment, and state governments. The decisions of such vital projects be given to the SSC could not have been taken so easily, as they suffer from an inefficient bureaucracy that often causes delays. The management of the old company is not based on merit, but political connection. Agland has long been neglected as a region which in need of serious investments in its infrastructure. While this is positive news, it is doubtful this project was worthy of the money and time that it will consume. Well, you're entitled to your view, aren't you? Right. And with Highway underway, that is where we will sup. I've been Yorkie the Talespinner. This has been Tales Over Coffee.